So the ripples across the royal verse are still propagating with special force, and regardless if you want to just brush off Omid Scobie's allegations, we are already seeing headlines like this, my rogues. Palace considering all options after King Charles and Catherine are named in Archie's skin color row. When the allegations first surfaced 2 years ago, the palace described them as fiction. The claims resurfaced this week after the names were published in a Dutch translation of a new book by Omid Scobie. And even if Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II was the champion of never explain, never complain, there were times in which it was needed, a bit of action, considering that she twice sued the Sun for breach of copyright. The first time was in 1988, when relations between the royals and the tabloids were particularly bad. The paper reached an out of court settlement after publishing a stolen photograph, not this one, showing Sarah, Duchess of York, and Princess Beatrice, which the royal family had planned to use on their Christmas card that year. The second time was in 1993, when royal tabloid relations were just as bad, when the paper paid £200,000 to charity in an out of court settlement after publishing a leaked text of the Queen's Christmas broadcast. And I'm sure you're thinking what I'm thinking, that these two events were rather small or inconsequential in comparison to what we are talking about today. And I am not just talking about the mistakes in Belen game, which I will address in a minute, but the fact that Buckingham Palace has not denied that said written communications between Meghan and Charles actually happened. I was genuinely considering that I was wrong about this, and perhaps the way to make it up to you is to have a conjecture of how these written communications happened. Having quite some experience in manipulation, I'm quite sure that the first letter was written from Meghan to the then Prince of Wales in a rather general way of talking, mentioning that it was brought to her attention that some high up members of the royal family discussed the color of Archie's skin, which, well, upset her. Writing the letter in that way, there would have been no reason for courtiers at Clarence's house to block it or not show it to Charles. In fact, for all that it's worth, the letter could have been just a drawing of a stick Meghan with a crown, and the courtiers would have handed it to Charles either way. But of course, not wanting to come off as rude, even after the Oprah interview, Charles decided to answer Meghan's letter, saying that any remarks of skin color nature must not have been in bad faith. Now, the problem that this entails is that Charles actually had written communications with Meghan regarding this issue, but nobody can possibly know the contents of said communications. So that could be the reason that right now Buckingham Palace cannot flat out deny that the letters did not exist. Because the moment Buckingham Palace says this, and if the letters do exist, then Meghan is going to leak them through a third party just to prove that the royal family are liars. So that's where game theory brings us. Buckingham Palace is silent because some communications do exist and exist on the topic of Archie Shadegate. And Meghan would never leak the whole letters, of course, of all these communications. She would leak only 1 or 2 pages to prove she talked about the topic with Charles. And why would she leak only part of the communication, you ask? Because that way she leaves the door open for speculations of the general public that are not speculations anymore, because thanks to her favorite shield, this Count Barbican, then everybody supposes that the two royal racists are King Charles and Catherine. So the ball is at Buckingham Palace court, and the only one who can call the next move is King Charles himself. But I wanted to know your opinion about this, so I made a poll on Twitter. In regards to Omid Scobie's mistakes in Belen game, the king should sue Scobie's R's, just issue a statement, or do nothing. And after more than 400 votes, the numbers didn't lie. More than 60% of you want the king to sue Scobie, while 26% opt for simply do nothing. But there's a problem. I am not an attorney, but still I don't see a viable case here, because in any trial you have to demonstrate actual malicious intention. And what is Scobie claiming? That he is not at fault. He sent the right manuscript to the Dutch publisher without the names. And meanwhile, the British prince brings some light in one of the real victims of Belen game. Meet Saskia Peters, one of the translators accused by Omid Scobie to have made a mistake in his propaganda book. Now, this poor woman has become another victim of the narcissist of Montecito. Saskia said she's been crying since this happened. This is not fair because this lady was just doing her job and now she's been treated like plain old collateral damage thanks to Omid Scobie and Meghan Markle. That is the problem that I tell you in regards of what are the actions that the king could take. And it's not easy spotting how can he punish the real ones responsible for this. I'm sure Scobie also was careful enough to cover his tracks, sending not one, not two, but 5 or 6 different versions of the manuscript and tell whoever was in the other end, who might not be the translator herself, hey, remember it's file number 4, and that person relayed file number 4 to someone else, and that someone else relayed that to the translator who only did their job. Book publishing companies, as mostly any other company, can be complex enough. So I would not be surprised in the least that Scobie never actually had any sort of contact with the Dutch translator. He has no way of checking their work. Obviously, if he says that the problem is the translation, the first ones that are going to come under fire are the translators when they are just doing their job. In fact, the real responsible will be the Dutch editor. As I said, it's complex, and I'm sure Meghan and Scobie are taking advantage of such complexity. To make matters even worse, a lawsuit would mean that the contents of the letters between Meghan and the king will be revealed to the world. And maybe the letters do not mention anybody in particular. As I said, most probably Meghan talked in general terms. The problem is that even if no names are in the letters, this would be a net negative for the king. He was played by Meghan, after all, into writing some letters. That doesn't look good in any way. And to make things even worse, all this means that if the king decides to do nothing, to never explain, never complain, then Catherine will have to suck it up because, yes, we are fans of the royal family. We're fans of Catherine. We know that none of this happened, but the general public is going to see Charles' silence as acknowledging the claims. Yes, for the most part, one should go for the never explain, never complain, because otherwise you will live all your life picking up petty fights with who knows how many small actors. But what happens when said small actors are so close to home? The rules of the game change. There's an expression in Spanish, el que calla otorga, which is translated to silence implies consent. Not a good look by any means. And it's not the same when Harry and Meghan are called out for the same silence, because now you understand why Scobie made sure to say many times that they are irrelevant to the future of the monarchy, right? And in a last-minute news, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex will be excluded from the Duke of Westminster's wedding because of the royal rift. A real blow to Harry and Meghan as Royal Nika reveals that Hugh Grosvenor is also Prince Archie's godfather. And final thoughts from Cambridge Power on Twitter. Prince George can't even have a godfather exclusively for him because Harry is so jealous of William that he chose the same godfather for his firstborn. I would love to know what you think about this in the comments. And remember, my rogues, that you have just 24 hours to get my Much Love and Bliss and Highlander Rogue merch. 24 hours and they are gone. So make sure you hit the link in the description and get yours. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Royal Rogue. And remember the 2 most important words, much love and bliss.